Hey guys, how you doing? And welcome back to another video today. So today I want to speak about something a bit different because I feel that this topic which I'm talking about today is something that is very important for us, especially in our journey in our spiritual lives. And so that is role models and friendships because sometimes we forget how influential role models can be on our own lives, the way we act, the way we live, as well as friendships. And so I want to speak about this topic today and highlight the qualities of a good friendship and the importance of having good role models and friendships. And so, what is a role model, first of all? So, role models, of course, someone we look up to, admire, someone we are inspired by. It can be someone that is close to us, but it can also be someone that is distant. Like a celebrity. We may, find celebrities and the way they do things as something that is very inspirational for us, but it can also be a family member, who we are very close to, who has had a massive influence on our lives, and so they are also a role model for us. And so, just to put a Google definition out there, the Google basically says that a role model is a person looked to by others as an example to be imitated. So that basically is saying that a role model is someone who we look up to, and who we try and not impersonate and be exactly like them, but then have them as a model for the way we live our own lives, basically. And so now this leads to the question of why do we need to be careful about our role models? And that is firstly because our role model can have the power to change our character. And so our parents were brought us up in a certain way, but then if we have good role models, they would also encourage us to live in a very good way. But at the same time, if we have bad role models, it can really change our character in a more negative way. And so, secondly, leading on from that, then once they have impacted the way we live our lives, we then become different people. And it can even get to a point where we forget about our own identity because of the role models around us. But the same way, a role model can also, help you live out who you truly are. So that's also, so there's like a good side and a bad side, to having role models. And so if it's bad, it can break the morals and the disciplines that you were brought up with. There'll be, values that you would have had, put in you from a child. But then as you grow older and as you start to live away from your parents, and you are in an environment where you're more independent and by yourselves, if you have the wrong people around you, the wrong role models around you, it can slowly start to break those upbringing core values that you've had since you were a child. And so now, so what are the qualities then of a good role model? So what should we look in a role model? What should a role model possess to be that good role model for us? So firstly, the role model should always have good morals and values, because when you have good morals and values, it sits well with your conscience as well. Because there can be times where we see people, like someone who we look up to, do something, and then it goes slightly against our conscience, and that itself is basically alarm bells telling you that what this person is doing is not a good thing to imitate or to copy. And so a good role model is someone who has good morals, good values, and someone who, like, with the things that they do, it sits well with your conscience. So secondly, they should have a very positive influence on you. So they should make you better, not make you worse, not change you completely, but make who you are, but then help you become even better, help you reach, bigger, greater heights. That's what a good role model should be able to do. And so then that leads on to the next point, which is to encourage you to be a better person, to encourage you to, go, perhaps even go out of your way to doing good things. And that is an example of a good role model. And ultimately, they should inspire you to be good. You should see them as a role model, and then also at the same time, they should also give you that inspiration, also to have that good influence on other people as well. And so now, obviously, this comes back to scripture ultimately, and so what does the scripture say about us, being good role models? And so it basically says, in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12, Let no one despise your youth, but set the believers an example in speech and conduct, in love, in faith, in purity. The thing is, some of us, we may have, younger siblings who look up to us. And so in here, in St. Paul's letter to Timothy, basically what he is saying is that you need to set a good example, because there will be people that look up to you. There will be people whom you are responsible for. We may not know it. They will never tell us, oh, you are my role model, but they will in their hearts look up to you. So if you set bad examples for them, it can also lead them astray. And so what St. Paul is saying here is that as role models for other people, we ourselves need to make sure we have good speech. We are living our lives good. We have good conduct, and we live our lives in love, in faith, and in purity. And then in Titus, chapter 2, verse 7, it says, show yourself in all respects a model of good works, and in your teaching show integrity, gravity, and sound speech that cannot be censored. Then any opponent will be put to shame, having nothing evil to say to us. And so what is being said here is, there will be people that will come to us and they will try and say something to us to provoke us, to get us angry, and ultimately they want a response from you, a bad response from you. But if you respond to that evil with good, if you respond with good speech to that person, if you respond to that person with good works, show them that in that situation you love them, as Christ loves them, and you show them that level of maturity, that itself can be powerful enough to change that person. And so that is what a very important aspect of being a role model is. So we spoke about what we should look up to in role models, but also now for us to be role models for others, we need to be able to, not fall for the temptations, not fall for what is easy and retaliating to bad, but respond to it with good. Counteract bad with good, basically. And then in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 21, it says, for to this you have been called, because Christ also suffered for you, leaving you an example, so that you should follow in his steps. So ultimately, our greatest model, the person that we should be molding our lives around, is Christ. And when we talk about Christ's suffering, what does that mean? In his suffering, he showed obedience, he showed love, and he showed endurance. And these are things from Christ that we can imitate and implement in our own lives to make us the best people that we can be. And in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1, it says, therefore be imitators of God as beloved children. So we must imitate God. We must imitate Christ, the way he lived his life, the way he valued people, the way he shared and showed so much love. And so these are things that we need to also try and implement in our own lives. So who then? So we spoke about the characteristics of role models. We also spoke about how we can be good role models. So then that leads us to the question of who can we then look up to as our role models? The first people that come for me in my own life is personally my parents. Because from since I was a child, I've seen so much of how much my parents had sacrificed for me and for my own well-being. And so that is in itself is something that is quite inspiring, for them to be able to, put all their own pleasures to a side just so that they can look after you, feed you, and make sure that you have that good childhood. And although that is partly their responsibility as parents, but at the same time, we must not forget that in their sufferings that they go through for you, there is so much love that comes from that. And I know not everyone is fortunate enough to have parents like that, but at least for those of you that have parents that have sacrificed a lot, maybe take this time to just really appreciate what they have done for you. So this goes on to the next point about the supports that they give us. For them to be a support system for us, something so incredible and something so important in our lives. Because without that support system, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually, sometimes we can collapse ourselves. And so God gives these parents to you for you for him to be able to support you, and your parents are an instrument of God's support for you. And so ultimately, my dear friends, they are a gift from God, because we must not forget that it is through our parents God has given us life. God has given us an existence. God has given us a purpose. And all that happens firstly through our parents. So we can't forget the role of our parents there. And so, for my own personal life, I realized that you can ask many people for prayers, but and they will probably say prayers for you. But for me, anyways, my parents are the only people in this world whom you don't need to ask for them to pray for you, but they would unconditionally pray for you. And so that is why parents are so inspiring for our lives. And if you think about all the good that the Lord has done in your life, it is because of the prayers of your parents and your ancestors and your great ancestors. And so we must not forget the role of our parents from that perspective. But also, as Catholics, as Christians, we can't forget about the saints, because first of all, we must remember that the saints are not dead. They're not just people of history who have now died, but they're still present and they're still alive and active. And, when we read about the lives of these saints, we should be inspired by their conversions. We should be inspired by, the life, that they lived. Some of them lived so recklessly for God. And so what I would say to you guys is, every saint has a story behind them. Every saint has gone through something which has made them a saint. And there are always saints that we can have a special kind of devotion to, because they, in a unique way, have been able to connect with us and our lives. And so if we take these saints as well, that whom we can connect to as our role models, then that will definitely benefit us. And so one key characteristic of saints is that they were able to identify Jesus in people. And a great example of that is Mother Teresa of Calcutta. In the poor, she saw Jesus and she fed them. And so these saints, some of them were able to see Jesus, the work of Jesus in everything. And that is a characteristic of a saint that we need to be inspired by as well. And so, they thought like Jesus. There's no greater people than on this earth who are still alive and active spiritually than saints, because they themselves were so united to the will of God, to the will of Christ, and they even thought like how Jesus would think. And obviously, one of the greatest models, is Mother Mary. In her obedience, she shows great. She shows a great example in her obedience to the call of God to conceive to our salvation. And Saint Irenaeus, says that through Eve's disobedience came destruction, but through Mary's obedience, came salvation. Mary was so united to the will of God. She was so united to what God wanted of her, and she was, born without sin. She was born, as a perfect human being. And so Mother Mary, in that sense, she is someone whom we can look up to and ask intercession for our growth, to try and be as obedient and as good as she is. And so now we spoke about role models, and now we move on to friendships. And so friendships is something very important, because all of us, we desire friendships. This is a relationship that a lot of us will find so important in our lives. And so in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 33, so St. Paul says this: "Do not be deceived. Bad company ruins good morals." So you see how role models can influence you badly and good as at the same time. Even friendships can also lead you astray. Friendships can also turn you away from your roots, from what you've been brought up with. Bad thoughts and deeds that we do can be influenced by the people that we are surrounded by. If people around you have a bad thoughts, start to use very foul, very bad language, then that could influence you too. So you need to be very careful in that respect. For example, you may be surrounded in friendships where there's so much gossip, where there's so much lust, hatred, unforgiveness. If you're around these things so much, it can start to then influence you. You will slowly start to gossip. You will slowly start to have lustful thoughts. You'll slowly start to share hatred to someone because your friends are showing hatred to someone, and then because your friends are not forgiving, are showing a lot of unforgiveness. You then will slowly start to show unforgiveness towards people. So that it also is a possibility that can happen if you're surrounded in bad groups. So our holy lives partially depend on the environments that we are in and the people that we are with. And so we must remember that, apart the Lord has put us in this earth, and we as human beings learn from things around us. There can be good things that we learn from around us, but at the same time, there can be bad things. And so we need to be very, aware of that. And so now, what are the qualities of a good friendship? So, firstly, a good friendship should show unconditional support regardless of the decisions that you make, especially if it's a decision that you have made that is in according to the will of God. There'll be people that won't understand some decisions that you make, but a good friend will show that if you have made this decision and you're so happy with the decision, and especially if you found peace with this decision, then they will support you. And that is a good sign, a sign of a good friendship. And they will encourage you whenever you're down, whenever you feel like whenever you have that sort of low self-esteem. They will encourage you to be better, to be stronger. They will give you the advice that you need rather than what you want, because it's not necessary that the advice that we want to hear is what is the good advice for us. But sometimes a good friendship would always give you the advice that you need to hear. And even though that advice may be something that we don't necessarily want to hear, it would be the best advice for us. And that is a sign of a good friendship, that they are concerned for what's good for you, not just concerned for you emotionally. But if they feel that they need to say something to you, which you may not like, but they know it's for your good, and if they say that, then that is a sign of a good friendship. And they will be able to forgive you even when you have hurt them. That is a sign of a good friendship, that they value your relation. If you come with a a repenting heart, saying sorry to them, then a good sign of that friendship is then them coming back to you saying, I forgive you, and then reconciling with you. So a sign of good friendship is also when you are able to identify Christ in them. Sometimes Jesus speaks so powerfully through people and through your relationships with people. And so a good sign of a friendship is when you are then also able to identify Christ speaking in that relationship. And ultimately, a good friendship should also help you spiritually grow in Christ, get deeper into Christ. And they will not lead you into immorality. They won't lead you into to bad thoughts and bad things, but they'll encourage you to go into good things. Live a moral life. And so, ultimately, my friends, seek Christ, and He will give you the right role models and the right friendships. And that's the most important thing, because I remember for me, when I had that spiritual conversion, that spiritual encounter with Christ, I lost a lot of friends because I've now decided to live my life in a different way. And but when you make that original decision to live for Christ first, then He will flip your life around, and He will also then give you the people that you need in your life to be able to get closer to Him. So my dear friends, this is just the final bit of advice that I will give. It's if you really are looking for the right friends for your life, let that first friend be God. Let that first friend be Jesus. And then from then, Jesus will give you the people that you need for you, and that is the best for you. So my friends, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week ahead, and have a great Christmas as well. And until next time, God bless.